The guard's hand landed on Marcus Coleman's chest at 7:14 on a Saturday morning, and the lobby of Meridian General Hospital went very, very still. Not all at once. The way rooms go still in real life, one sound dropping out at a time. The receptionist at the circular welcome desk stopped typing. A nurse crossing from the elevator bank to the corridor paused mid-stride. Two visitors waiting near the entrance, a man in a cardigan and a teenage girl with headphones around her neck, both turned without deciding to. Marcus didn't step back. He didn't raise his hands. He simply stood there in the lobby of a building where 847 people worked, and where, in a filing cabinet on the 14th floor, there existed a document bearing his signature authorizing the construction of every wall around them, and he looked at the guard's hand on his chest the way a man looks at something he has already decided how to respond to before it fully arrived. His daughter Lily was beside him, 8 years old, wearing a purple jacket with a small embroidered star on the left pocket, her braids tied back with a yellow band she had picked out herself that morning with the seriousness of someone making an important decision. She had been holding her father's hand 3 seconds earlier. Now her fingers found his again, tightening around two of them the way they always did when the world produced something that didn't add up. "I need you to step back outside, sir." The guard's voice was firm, practiced, new too. Marcus could hear it in the cadence, the kind of authority that hadn't yet been worn smooth by the particular friction of dealing with people. "I have business in this building," Marcus said. "We've had a security protocol update," the guard said. "Authorized personnel only through this entrance before 8 a.m. Maintenance and custodial staff use the service entrance on the Lower East Side." He glanced at Marcus's clothes, at the worn gray work shirt, at the boots, at the absence of anything that looked expensive. "I'm going to have to ask you to use the correct entrance." Lily looked up at her father. Marcus looked at the guard's name tag. It read Craig. The family near the entrance had both fully turned. The nurse who had paused mid-stride was still paused. The receptionist at the welcome desk was watching with the particular careful attention of someone who felt they ought to do something and hadn't yet worked out what. Before 8 o'clock that morning had fully begun, a man was being told to use the service entrance of a hospital he had founded with his own name on the charter. Before the morning was over, someone in that building would be looking for a new job. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong somewhere you helped build with your own hands, this one is for you. Subscribe and stay with us. Marcus Coleman had a system for Saturday mornings, and it had not changed in 11 years. He was up by 5:45. Not because anything required it, but because his body had stopped accepting sleep past that hour sometime in his late 30s and had not been persuaded otherwise since. He made coffee, dark roast, no sugar, in the same chipped mug his daughter had made him 2 Christmases ago at a pottery class, painted with uneven blue stripes and a lopsided M that Lily had explained stood for both Marcus and Magnificent, which he thought was either very funny or very true and had decided it was probably both. By 6:30, Lily was awake. He always knew the exact moment she crossed from sleep into waking because the apartment shifted with it. One small thud as her feet hit the floor, the sound of a drawer sliding open and shut. Then 30 seconds of silence while she made whatever calculation children made when deciding whether a morning was worth engaging with yet. Then footsteps. Then the kitchen doorway. Then Lily herself, wearing a purple jacket over her pajama shirt because she had decided at some point in the last month that the jacket was appropriate for any occasion and had not been fully argued out of this position. "Is it a hospital day?" she asked. "It's a hospital day," he said. She climbed onto the kitchen stool and pulled the cereal toward her with the decisive efficiency of someone who had places to be. Marcus watched her and felt the particular warmth of the moment. Uncomplicated, unhurried, the kind of happiness that didn't need to be identified to be real. He was not a man who was easy to look at in the way that power was easy to look at. He was broad-shouldered and deliberate in his movements, somewhere in his early 40s, with close-cropped hair going slightly gray at the temples, and a face that had learned over many years to stay neutral in rooms where neutrality was the only safe option. He wore a plain gray work shirt most days, dark trousers, boots that had logged more hours than he usually counted. He owned nothing that announced itself. He drove a 10-year-old truck that started reliably and asked nothing of him beyond fuel and occasional attention, which felt like a fair arrangement. People who met Marcus Coleman in a grocery store or at a school pickup would have placed him, correctly, as a working man. Someone with calloused hands and early mornings. Someone who had built something with his body as much as his mind. They would not have been entirely wrong. They would simply have missed the larger part of the picture. Marcus Coleman was the founder of Meridian General Hospital. He had established it 19 years ago with a $400,000 loan, a vacant property on the east side of the city, and a founding team of 7 people, 4 of whom had told him privately that they gave it 3 years before it failed. It had not failed. It had grown from a 60-bed community hospital into a 400-bed regional medical center with a Level 2 trauma designation and a pediatric wing he had named quietly and without fanfare after his father. He had also, in the years between founding the hospital and the Saturday morning on which he stood in its lobby being directed to the service entrance, completed a residency in internal medicine, practiced for 8 years, and stepped back from active clinical work when Lily's mother got sick and his daughter needed him somewhere other than a call room at 2 in the morning. He was not the CEO. He was not the CMO. He held the title of Founding Medical Director Emeritus, which was the kind of title that meant everything and appeared on nothing the general public would ever see. He sat on the board. He had final authority on decisions regarding the hospital's founding mission that the current CEO technically didn't. That had been written into the original charter. It was still there, but he drove a 10-year-old truck and wore a gray work shirt on Saturdays. And he visited his hospital unannounced, the way he always had, dressed the way he always dressed, because his father had told him once that the only honest way to know what was happening inside a place you ran was to walk through it as someone nobody was performing for. His father, James Coleman, had waited 9 hours in an emergency room 18 miles from this one, 31 years ago, while the staff at the desk processed patients who arrived after him with a speed that bore no correlation to medical urgency. He had waited because he was a black man in a work shirt with no insurance card they recognized, and because the particular combination of those factors produced in the people behind that desk a specific kind of calculation that they had already made before he opened his mouth. By the time anyone properly assessed James Coleman, the blood clot that had been migrating toward his lung for the better part of 4 hours had completed its journey. Marcus had been 17 years old, sitting in a plastic chair 20 feet away, doing homework, when the doctor came out. He did not become a doctor because of that moment. He became a doctor because medicine was what he was drawn to, what he was built for, what made sense to him in the way that certain things make sense to certain people without requiring explanation. But the hospital was his father's. The pediatric wing bore his father's name. The framed founding charter on the 14th floor included a line that no one had asked about in 5 years, but that Marcus had written himself and would not have removed under any circumstances. It read, "Every person who enters these doors is treated as if their time and their pain matter equally, regardless of what they are wearing, where they came from, or what they can afford to pay." He visited unannounced on the 3rd Saturday of every month. He had done it for 19 years. He saw things during those visits that he would never have seen during a scheduled inspection, and he made decisions based on what he saw. And those decisions had shaped the culture of the institution in ways that no policy memo could have fully achieved. This was the man that Craig, head of overnight security at Meridian General, was directing toward the service entrance at 7:14 on a Saturday morning. They had arrived just before 7:20, later than Marcus usually came, because Lily had asked that morning if she could bring her drawing notebook, and he had waited while she selected which pencils to pack, a process that apparently required more deliberation than he had budgeted time for. He didn't mind. He had long ago stopped fighting the reality that mornings with an 8-year-old were not optimizable, and had made his peace with that as a genuine improvement to his life rather than an inconvenience. The parking lot at that hour was quiet the way hospital parking lots were quiet in the early morning. The daytime rush not yet begun, the night shift winding down, the particular in-between quality of an institution that never fully slept. The morning was cool, the light still thin and horizontal, The kind of early autumn light that made everything look slightly more deliberate than it usually did. The air smelled of concrete and cut grass from the landscaped median, and somewhere beyond the parking structure, the distant sound of a delivery truck backing up beeped once, twice, and went quiet. Lily skipped ahead of him across the lot with her notebook tucked under one arm, her yellow hairband catching the light. She had a way of moving that suggested she had recently made peace with gravity but had not entirely agreed to its terms. Marcus watched her and let himself feel, for a moment, the simple fact of the morning, the cool air and the low light, and his daughter 3 steps ahead of him and nothing else. He had walked through these doors hundreds of times. The lobby was familiar to him in the way that something you built from nothing became familiar, not as a visitor knew a place but as a maker knew a thing. He knew the angle of the light through the east-facing windows in the early morning. He knew the particular sound the automatic doors made when their hydraulics were due for maintenance. He knew the third chair from the left in the waiting area near the entrance had a wobble in its back left leg that had been reported 3 times and fixed twice and had apparently returned. He pushed through the automatic doors and the lobby came in around him. The soft overhead lighting, the faint smell of antiseptic beneath the cleaner scent of the welcome desk flowers, white lilies, changed every Monday. The low, steady sound of the hospital working somewhere behind the walls, ventilation and distant monitoring, and the particular hum of a building that was always doing something even when it appeared still. He had taken 3 steps inside when Craig stepped into his path. Craig was in his mid-30s, square-jawed, with the posture of someone who had been recently promoted and was still learning how that felt in his body. He wore the hospital security uniform, navy blue, pressed to a sharpness that suggested he had pressed it himself that morning, and he carried a walkie-talkie on his belt, positioned with precision at his left side. He was not a bad man. He was a man who had been given authority and a protocol, and had decided, with the genuine conviction of someone who believed the rules existed for good reason, to apply them uniformly. He had been brought in 6 weeks ago after a security audit identified gaps in weekend morning coverage. He had read the protocols thoroughly. He intended to implement them. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the gray work shirt and the worn boots and the child beside him in the purple jacket. He registered no badge, no lanyard, no identifying credential of any kind. He registered nothing that the protocol categorized as authorized. "Good morning, sir," Craig said, stepping forward. "I'm going to need to see your access credentials." "Morning," Marcus said. "Marcus Coleman. I'm here to walk the floor." Craig's expression did not change significantly. It was the expression of someone applying a category. "Do you have a visitor pass or an employee badge? We have a new protocol for weekend early entry. Before 8 a.m., we require visible credentialing for all personnel." "I don't carry a badge," Marcus said. "I've been coming here every 3rd Saturday for 19 years. Craig's expression took on the patient quality of someone who had heard this kind of statement before and understood that it did not in itself constitute authorization. "I understand, sir. But without visible credentials, I'm not able to let you pass the lobby before 8 a.m. I can call up to the weekend duty administrator if you'd like to wait." "Call them," Marcus said. "That's fine." Craig made the call. It went to voicemail. He tried a second extension. It rang 4 times and connected to an automated system. He tried the weekend charge nurse on the 3rd floor. She answered and told him, with audible confusion, that she didn't know anyone with the authority to credential an unannounced visitor at this hour on a Saturday without a badge, and that he should follow protocol. Craig relayed this to Marcus with the composed expression of a man who had followed every step correctly and was satisfied with the outcome. "Sir, I'm sorry. Without verification, I can't authorize your entry. If you come back after 8 a.m., with proper documentation, I'm happy to help you at that point." "I don't have documentation with me," Marcus said. "I've never needed it." "I understand. But the protocol requires—" "Who issued the protocol?" Craig paused a half-second. "It was implemented by the weekend security manager following the August audit." "And who authorized the audit?" "That would be above my pay grade, sir," Craig said, with the polite definitiveness of someone closing a door. Marcus looked at him steadily. "I'm sure it would be," he said, and then he said nothing else. He took a step toward the corridor behind the welcome desk, the one that led to the elevator bank, the one he had walked down every third Saturday for 19 years. Not aggressive, not confrontational, simply moving in the direction of where he needed to go. Craig moved to intercept him. His hand came up and connected flat-palmed with Marcus's chest. The lobby did what it did. The sounds dropped out one at a time until the remaining quiet had a texture of its own. Lily's fingers found her father's hand. Marcus looked at Craig's hand on his chest. Then he looked at Craig's face. "You're going to want to move that," Marcus said, quietly enough that only Craig heard it. Not as a threat, as information. Craig moved his hand, but he didn't step back. "Sir, I'm asking you to use the service entrance on the Lower East Side. Maintenance and custodial staff access." "I'm not a janitor," Marcus said. "I'm not suggesting." "You are," Marcus said. "You looked at my clothes and made a determination, and you're asking me to use a different door. I understand exactly what you're suggesting." Craig's jaw tightened slightly. The practiced authority in his expression shifted into something less smooth. "Sir, I'm doing my job. I need you to cooperate with hospital security protocol, or I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside." Lily looked up at her father. He could feel her watching him. He could feel her trying to understand the shape of what was happening between these two men, the way she always tried to understand things, quietly, without demanding more than what was being offered. "I built this hospital," Marcus said. The sentence landed the way true and unexpected things always landed, with a weight that didn't immediately compute. Craig looked at him. Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile, not quite dismissal. The expression of a man who has heard something and has already begun assembling the reasons it cannot be correct. "Sir," Craig said, "I understand. But I still need you to." "I built this hospital," Marcus said again. His voice was still even, still unhurried, still entirely without heat. "My name is on the founding charter on the 14th floor. The pediatric wing to your left is named after my father. I have been walking through that corridor every third Saturday for 19 years, in this shirt and these boots, because that is how I have always come here. That is not going to change because of a protocol implemented without my knowledge." Craig looked at him for a moment. Whatever internal calculation he was running, it resolved in the direction of procedure. "Sir, if that's the case, someone upstairs will be able to verify it at 8 a.m., and I'll be happy to." "Craig?" The voice came from the far side of the lobby, from the corridor near the elevator bank, precise and unhurried, carrying the quality of someone accustomed to being heard in rooms full of people who had other things to pay attention to. Dr. Yvonne Reed was 53 years old, the chief medical officer of Meridian General, and she had been working alongside Marcus Coleman for 17 of the hospital's 19 years. She was in her weekend clothes, dark slacks, a burgundy top, because CMOs who had been at Meridian since nearly the beginning also came in on Saturday mornings, for different reasons than he did, but with the same underlying refusal to fully disengage. She had a coffee from the second-floor break room in one hand and a tablet tucked under her other arm, and she had come through the corridor and into the lobby and stopped 6 feet away from the conversation she was looking at with the complete stillness of someone who had just processed what they were seeing. She looked at Craig, she looked at Marcus, she looked at Lily, who was looking back at her with the frank, evaluating gaze of an 8-year-old who hadn't decided yet whether this woman was going to be helpful. Something moved across Yvonne Reed's face. It was not anger, it was something slower and more complicated than anger. The expression of a person who had worked for 17 years to build something specific and was standing in the lobby of it, watching a version of the thing her colleague had always been afraid might happen inside these walls happen to him, in his own building. She crossed the lobby in the measured stride of someone who had stopped rushing across rooms about a decade ago, because she had learned the hard way that the authority you projected when you didn't hurry was more useful than the authority you projected when you did. She stopped beside Marcus and looked at Craig with the expression of a woman who had performed triage in situations considerably more complicated than this one, and was currently allocating patients in specific and limited quantities. "Do you know who this man is?" she asked. Craig stood straight. He claims to be associated with the hospital's founding. His name is Marcus Coleman, Yvonne said. He founded this hospital 19 years ago. The pediatric wing to your left is named after his father. The founding charter on the 14th floor has his signature on it. I have worked for this man for 17 years. She paused once, deliberately. How long have you worked here? Craig said. 6 weeks. Yvonne looked at him steadily. Then you have 6 weeks of experience telling a man with 19 years of institutional authority to use the service entrance. Craig's color changed. Not dramatically, not the way it changed in films, but the specific quiet shift of a person whose professional certainty has just been structurally compromised and who has not yet worked out what to do inside the new architecture of the situation. I was following protocol, he said. His voice had lost some of its practiced firmness. I know you were, Yvonne said. And the way she said it made it clear that following the protocol was not, in this case, the defense Craig had intended it to be. She turned to Marcus. He was looking at her with the expression she had known for 17 years. Not quite a smile and not quite anything else. The expression of a man who had seen what he came to see and was now deciding what to do with it. Marcus, she said. Not as a greeting, as an acknowledgement. Yvonne, he said. She looked down at Lily. Lily was looking up at her with the expression of someone who had made a preliminary assessment and was cautiously prepared to upgrade it. Hi, Lily. Hi, Dr. Reed, Lily said, with the careful politeness of a child who had been introduced to this particular adult several times and understood that she was important to her father. Yvonne set her coffee on the welcome desk with a deliberate movement, took out her phone, and made a call. It lasted 40 seconds. She said 4 sentences, listened, and ended the call. Then she looked at Craig. The director of operations is on his way down, she said. He'll be here in approximately 8 minutes. I'd suggest you use that time to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Craig stood in the center of the lobby with the particular stillness of a person whose understanding of the situation had undergone a complete structural revision and who had not yet mapped the new version of it. The authority that had been in his posture at 7:14 was gone. Not broken exactly, but reconfigured into something smaller and less certain. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Yvonne. He looked at Lily, who was looking back at him with the thoughtful, unhurried gaze of a child working something out on her own timeline. Is he going to be in trouble? Lily asked her father, quietly. Not to the room. Marcus looked down at her. He kept his voice low, for her only. We're going to figure out what's right, he said. That's all. Lily considered this with the methodical quality she brought to most things. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied, and reached into her notebook bag for a pencil. The director of operations was a man named Gerald Park, 48, who had been with Meridian General for 11 years and who moved through institutional weight the way people moved when they understood exactly how much of it they were carrying. He came through the elevator doors at 7:28 and crossed the lobby with a stride that covered ground without appearing to hurry, and he stopped in front of Marcus with an expression that carried something between apology and the specific discomfort of a man who had understood, the moment Yvonne's call reached him, exactly what kind of morning this had become. Dr. Coleman, he said. Not Marcus. Not Sir. Dr. Coleman. Somewhere nearby, Craig heard it. Gerald, Marcus said. Gerald looked at Craig with a long, careful look. The look of a man taking the full measure of a situation before deciding on the appropriate response. It was a thorough assessment. It was not warm. Then he looked back at Marcus. I owe you an apology on behalf of this institution. What happened this morning? I know what it is, Marcus said. I don't need you to name it. Gerald paused. What would you like to do? Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked at the lobby around him. At the marble floor he had selected himself because marble, when polished, was what he could afford, and because he had believed, then as now, that the materials of a place communicated something to the people inside it about whether their presence mattered. At the light coming through the east-facing windows, falling across the welcome desk and the chairs in long, early morning diagonals. at the white lilies in the reception vase, changed every Monday without being formally asked because someone on the welcome desk staff had taken it upon herself to keep them fresh and had done so for 6 years without anyone acknowledging it, which Marcus had noted, and which he intended to address before he left today. He looked at Craig, who was standing with his hands at his sides, and the expression of a man who had arrived at a full understanding of the morning and was now waiting to find out what it cost. "Craig," Marcus said. The man looked at him. "I'm not going to tell you that you're a bad person. I don't believe you are. I believe you came to work this morning intending to do your job correctly, and I believe you did it the way you understood it." Marcus let that sit for a moment. But this hospital was built because a man was turned away from a building like this one in clothes like mine, and he did not get a second chance. My father. And the reason I wear these clothes when I come here, the reason I've worn them for 19 years, is because I need to know what the people who enter this building experience when they don't look like someone worth helping. He held Craig's gaze. "This morning told me what I needed to know." He looked at Gerald. "He can't stay in this role," Marcus said. Not with heat, not with satisfaction. As a statement of the way things were and what they required. Gerald gave a short nod. "I'll take care of it." Craig straightened slightly, one last automatic gesture, and then let it go. Whatever argument he still had somewhere in him, he chose not to use it. He turned and walked toward the security office without another word, with the particular quality of someone who understood that the most intact piece of their dignity left was the one they chose not to spend. Marcus turned away from him before Craig turned away from him. It was the only kind of consideration he had left to extend, and he extended it without comment. He looked at Yvonne. "Is the pediatric wing quiet this morning?" "It's Saturday," she said. "Always quieter." "Good." He looked down at Lily, who had found a pencil and was examining the tip with the evaluative focus of someone assessing a tool's fitness for purpose. "Want to come see your grandfather's name on the wall?" Lily looked up. Her face did something complicated. The expression of a child who has been told about something many times and is deciding, with great seriousness, whether to say yes. She had been here before. She had seen the wall before. But there was something in the way her father asked that always made it feel like the first time, and she always said yes. "Okay," she said. "Can I bring my notebook?" "You can bring your notebook." She tucked her pencil behind her ear and held up her hand. Marcus took it, and they walked together toward the elevator bank, past the welcome desk, past the nurse who had been standing still for 15 minutes and who watched them pass with the quiet expression of someone who had understood something this morning that they were going to be thinking about for a long time. The pediatric wing was on the 4th floor, and it had the particular quality that children's wards always had when they were done right. A lightness that the rest of the building didn't quite achieve. Color on the walls, a mural running along the left corridor that a local artist had painted 6 years ago, and which was refreshed every 2 years, because Marcus had put it in the maintenance schedule when he approved the original commission, and no one had removed it since. The name was on the wall at the entrance to the wing, etched in dark letters on a panel of pale stone. James Coleman Memorial Pediatric Wing. Lily stood in front of it for a moment and read it the way she always did, carefully, as though confirming it, still said what it had said before. Then she sat down on the bench across from it, opened her notebook, and began to draw. Marcus sat beside her. He didn't speak, and she didn't ask him to. The wing was quiet around them, the early Saturday stillness of a ward where the day hadn't fully claimed everything yet. He looked at his father's name on the wall, and let himself sit with it the way he did every time he came here. The 19 years. The 400 beds, the Level 2 trauma designation, the founding charter with the line about dignity that no one had asked about in 5 years, but that was still there. Still the first thing he intended anyone to read about this place. After a while, Lily looked up from her notebook. She turned it toward him. She had drawn the wall. His father's name in careful, slightly uneven letters, and beneath it 2 figures. One tall, one small, sitting on a bench. "Is that us?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Lily said, with the matter-of-fact confidence of someone stating an obvious fact. He looked at the drawing for a long moment, at the careful letters, at the 2 figures. "It's good," he said. "I know," she said, and went back to drawing. The consequences of the morning moved through Meridian General the way consequences moved through institutions. Not all at once, but in a wave, the understanding passing from person to person, arriving in different forms at different times. Craig's position was terminated that afternoon, after Gerald met with him in the security office with a formal HR representative present and the specific language of the hospital's founding conduct charter in a folder on the table between them. The conversation was thorough and without hostility, because Gerald was a man who understood that dignity was not something you suspended in the process of enforcing it. Yvonne held an all-staff communication that went out the following week. Not a reprimand, not a policy memo, a letter, written in the first person, describing what had happened in the lobby on a Saturday morning, and what it meant for the institution and what it meant for the people who worked inside it. She named no names. She didn't have to. The people who needed to understand it understood it, and the people who had been in the lobby that morning and had stood quietly without intervening read it with the particular discomfort of recognition. The weekend credentialing protocol was revised. The new version was simpler and covered what it needed to without providing architecture for the kind of discretionary assessment that had produced Saturday morning's outcome. Marcus read the letter when it went out. He read it once, standing at his kitchen counter with his coffee, and then set it down and called Yvonne and said 2 sentences, and she said 2 sentences back, and neither of them said anything that hadn't already been understood between them, and then they both returned to what they had been doing. On the 3rd Saturday of the following month, Marcus arrived at Meridian General at 7:18 in the morning. Gray work shirt, dark trousers, worn boots. Lily beside him in the purple jacket, notebook under her arm, yellow hairband catching the early light. He pushed through the automatic doors and crossed the lobby in the particular unhurried way he had always crossed it. The receptionist at the welcome desk looked up when he came in. "Good morning, Dr. Coleman," she said. "Good morning," Marcus said. Lily looked up at the woman with the evaluating gaze she brought to most initial assessments, decided something, and said, "Good morning." The receptionist smiled at her with the genuine warmth of someone who meant it. Lily filed this information and apparently approved, and followed her father toward the elevator bank. The lobby, behind them, returned to the ordinary Saturday morning business of being a hospital. Phones and quiet voices and the sound of the building working. The white lilies in the vase changed Monday. The marble floor in the angled morning light. The welcome desk. The chairs, including the one with the wobble in the back left leg, which Marcus had already put in a maintenance request for, and which would be fixed before the following weekend and would stay fixed. The things a place is made of are visible to everyone. The things a place is built for take longer to see, but they're there. In the names on the walls and the flowers changed every Monday, and the charter no one has asked about in 5 years but which still means what it always meant. They're there in the way the people inside it learn, one morning at a time, to look at the person coming through the door before they look at their clothes. Dignity is not a protocol. It is a practice. And like all things worth practicing, it never fully arrives. It only continues. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and stick around. More are coming.